Hello, welcome back to the Art of Living Well podcast. It's Stephanie and Marnie today. We're in person, which is so fun to do these episodes that are not, staring at each other across the screen. And we're talking about something today that I'm really excited about. And it's the letthem theory. And for those of you listening, I'm sure many of you have heard about it. It's Mel Robbins' latest book. And I binged listened to it in early January on recommendation from a couple of friends. And I'm going to be honest with you, I was out with some girlfriends one night. Actually, I think it was New Year's Eve. And I was just talking about some stuff with my kids, and they recommended that I read this book. They're like, Stephanie, you just have to let her. You just have to let it go and, stop trying to control. And in a good way, as parents, we often like to control our kids or the other people in our house. And it's honestly been a bit life-changing for me. And it's funny because I love Mel Robbins and I followed her for years, but I had not heard for whatever reason that she had this book that came out. And then, of course, as soon as you start listening, it pops up on your feed more frequently and you start listening to all the other podcasts that she's been on. And hey, Mel, if you're out there listening or if anyone out there who's listening knows Mel Robbins, we would love to have you come on. And on our show, you have an open invitation. I know you're busy right now promoting your book, but I read it and she talks about how some people have literally gotten tattooed on their arms the words "let them" because it's been so powerful and so transformational for them. And nothing against tattoos, but I wasn't planning on getting one. But I honestly have thought a few times, having those words as a daily reminder for you, I can understand why people do it. Who knows? Maybe I'll end up doing it. I'm not saying I won't, but I can understand after reading this book why someone may get tattooed. Let them. So.
Yeah, it's the book. So I read the book after Stephanie. She told me about it and I had heard about it from a couple other people. And I was like, yeah, I really like Mel Robbins. I'll read the book at some point. And Stephanie was raving about it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to this. This is going to the top of the list. And I binged the book in probably maybe 2 days. And I was like, oh, I should read it again because there were so many good parts of the book that I just wanted to be ingrained in my system. And I haven't read it again yet, but I do plan to. You may wonder, well, what is the let them theory? And it's a step-by-step guide on how to stop letting other people's opinions, dramas, and judgment impact your life. And that is, just doing those things alone can change a person's life, right? With these words, which are let them.
Yes.
And it seems like it's so basic. I know that, you know that, right?
Yeah.
But she just breaks it down in the book in a way that makes so much sense. And it almost gives you permission to stop trying to manage everybody else and just focus on managing yourself.
Absolutely. And the one thing that's so great about the book, one, she narrates it. Two, it doesn't read like a normal book. It's like she's having a conversation with you individually. And two, there's a ton of stories from her personal life. And she's so vulnerable and so real. And that's what we want to use this episode today to talk a little bit about too, our own experience from this and getting a little vulnerable and real, and how this simple strategy of just reminding yourself and saying, let them, whenever you start to get all riled up and stressed or emotionally exhausted because of what someone else in your life is or is not doing. And it's just freeing because it allows you to prioritize yourself. And we talk about that a lot on the podcast, right? All the things that we share each week and the guests and the tips and strategies, it all comes down to prioritizing what you want. And sometimes we say we don't have time to do those things, whether it's get outside for morning sun or take a walk or meal prep your food or whatever it is. But you know what? How much mental space we spend ruminating and thinking about what other people are doing and not doing and trying to control or trying to argue or trying to convince someone, that if we just let them, we'd have more time to prioritize ourselves.
And as we're coaching women, we want to empower you to do some of this so that, like Stephanie said, you can take your own time back and do the things that are important to you in your life. And maybe, you're not putting as much time and energy in terms of mental space and control into your children, but maybe you're more of a cheerleader, or you let them fall because sometimes they need to fall. And that's how they learn. And so I think that we want to encourage you to find ways to get unstuck and find more joy and find more energy and more intention in your own lives. And I think by applying some of these principles in the let them theory, it will really help you do that.
Yes. It's very freeing is what I've found. And, so some of the takeaways from the book, the power of letting go and releasing control. And one of the things that Mel talks about, and we all know this, right? This is not new information, is that you cannot control another adult. As a parent, when your kid's little, you can control certain things about them, right? But you really can't control another adult. And she has this whole chapter in the book that really resonated with me about her friend and her friend's husband and how the woman was always trying to get the guy to eat better and not sit on the couch so much and work out and do all these things and was nagging. And I can attest to the same. It spoke to me and my marriage 100%. Instead of spending all that time and energy nagging, which it's not working because the individual was not doing what the wife said. And if he did, he may go once and then he didn't like the gym or whatever it was, is just to step back and it's like lead by example. So even the same thing as a parent, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of trying to get your kid to again, you want them to eat well and eat their vegetables and move their body and all these things, but just model that as a parent. And so if you're doing it and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so great because I just got back from a walk or whatever it is, and not in a judgmental way, like, oh, you're sitting on the couch and and I just went out on a walk. I don't know what you're doing, but show how you're being authentic and true to yourself and you're feeling and you're benefiting from whatever it is, whether it's mindfulness or nutrition or, movement, whatever. And eventually the other person, hopefully maybe, will come around and find their why. And they'll find something that motivates and interests them. And it may not be exactly what you're doing. Maybe they don't like to go on a walk outside. Maybe they'd rather, play tennis or something.
But then I think about that. And just to be the devil's advocate, so what if they don't? What if they just continue to sit on the couch and eat the potato chips and watch the game? And then it's like, well, you just got to let them, right?
You do.
But have to let them. But it's really hard.
And you know who told me this a long time ago now? And I'm literally thinking about this out loud. I hadn't thought about it. So this is just going to come out. Is Lizzie Cutler, who's been on our podcast years ago. And she's a energy, intuitive work. She's doing all these different things now. And we'll link up her episode. And we did a live with her as well. We've done one-on-one sessions with her. And I remember having this conversation with her in a session. It was a virtual session. So she works with people around the world. And I think we were actually talking about this topic with my husband. And she's like, Stephanie, she basically said, let them. Because my thing is always don't you want to live to be 100 with me and be active? Right, and I want a partner who I know is going to be there with me. You don't want to be spoon
feeding your partner.
And I've already kind of said, I'm not going to be that person. I'm not. And she was basically let him. And so if that means that he doesn't live as long, who knows? I could die tomorrow in a car crash. I don't know. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is better or anything. You have to accept the fact that the path that you want for this person, whether it's your child, your parent, your sibling, your spouse, may not be the path that they want or that they are capable of in this lifetime or whatever it is. And you have to accept that and just know you can only control yourself. You can show up for yourself every day. You can do the things that fill you up, but you can't control someone else. And as much as you love them so much and you want them to be with you and do all the things with you,
it's self-liberating, right? It really is freeing, but it's very difficult.
Very hard.
I just think about my relationship with my parents and specifically my mother, who I love dearly. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, and it's not even that I want to control her, and maybe it is control, but I want to advise her or help her or guide her in certain areas. And she doesn't want to hear it from me, whether it's because I'm her child or for whatever reason it is, or maybe she hears some of it. But I use a lot of mental space and think about it a lot and get frustrated easily. And it's not good for me. No. And then I just have to say to myself, well, I just have to let her be. I can love her and be there for her, but she's going to do what she's going to do. And I need to be okay with that. it's really hard though, because it's like, but I want her to live to 100 and I want her to feel her best. And
if she just did these two things, if she just,
Yes. So it's really hard, and we want to acknowledge that. But again, when I do apply these principles, it is freeing. And I'm like, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? Like, I mean, there is a worst thing, obviously, that can happen, but it's not my life. And even though it's a person I love so dearly, it's not my life at the end of the day. And I can only worry about my life.
And it's accepting that person for who they are right now.
And where they're at.
And it's funny because we say this with our clients one-on-one, like our one-on-one clients all the time. We meet you where you're at. And I think with family, it's really easy for me to do that with a client.
Easy.
It's not easy for me to do that with family. And I have tried to control my kids when it comes to what they eat. And, we have a lot of good food in our house, but we have plenty of food that they could, go a day without eating any fruits or vegetables, just eating crackers or chips or whatever. And you're like, gosh, but at the end of the day, I also think about, and this is what one of my friends said on that New Year's Eve when she introduced Letthem. Think about, like, I'm 50, right? 51 maybe when this episode drops. Think of all the learnings and life experiences I've had till now. I certainly didn't know half of what I knew now when I was 16 or whatever age your kid is, right?
And that's so true.
And they need to go through life and learn and have natural consequences. And I certainly wasn't eating or in as good of shape, like emotionally.
I hope you were eating.
I was sorry.
Just want to clarify.
I was eating,
you were
but
definitely
I was probably eating like Snickers and Taco Bell and bagels and pretzels was, like that's what I was eating. So, and sweets. But anyway, my point is I certainly wasn't eating like I am now and taking care of myself and just as like in tune with my body and what I need, right? I was sort of ignoring the signs. But our kids have to go through that as well. And I would like to think that like they have a lot of tools and resources by how we both of us role model and live our lives. And not that it's perfect by any stretch, but we have to let them like be kids, let them be young adults, let them, stumble and fall a bit and learn from it. And what's the worst that can happen? Like, and that's a question to ask yourself when you go through this. Obviously, from a safety standpoint, you're not going to let your kid go out and like do something dangerous or harmful. But if it's like, they're like, I'm not going to study for this test. Well, what's the worst that can happen? I guess they'll fail the test and maybe they'll figure out a way to make it up or, improve their grade later or.
Right. I mean, as a parent, that you just hit like where I struggle sometimes is like, if I'm talking to a child and she's like, yeah, I have so much going on. I don't have time to go meet a teacher or to, study for this test as much as I want to. I'm like, well, where are your priorities here? Like, isn't school your main priority? And then you're right. Like, it's like you have to step back and think about this is their life and they need to, they're going to have consequences for their actions and they need to be okay with that. And as adults, we can see the bigger picture, right? And they can't always see the bigger picture. And a lot of kids live very much in the present. And, there's
which is good. There's something to be living in the present moment.
For sure. So, but they are kids. They do need to make mistakes. They do need to learn to grow from their mistakes. And another thing I think about a lot in this Letthem theory, and I think we have all experienced this, is when your friends are getting together and you aren't included.
Yes.
And you may see it on social media. Maybe your friend tells you about it. Maybe it's your child and their friends. But whether you're mama bear and it's your kid or it's happening in your own life with your friends, like it's okay. Yeah. People are allowed to get together without you. This was a really tough lesson for me to learn. I think I learned this. I mean, it still hurts sometimes, right? Like it hurts, but like I think in my younger years, I struggled with this a lot. Today, I'm a lot more comfortable with it. Like I don't necessarily want to get together with my 5 close friends all the time, all together. Sometimes it's really nice to be at one-on-one with someone and just like have that time. So I think instead of ruminating on why you weren't included, maybe just say, okay, let them go have their fun. If I want to see this person or this group of people, then I need to create an environment where I'm going to do that. Maybe I have them over for dinner or plan a girls' night or whatever it is.
Right. That's a big one. And I think that is still even as 50-year-old adults, we still go through that. I'm with you. Like, I'm much easier now to be able to say let them, but it also, when you see your kids going through that, that's hard. And at the end of the day, too, it's not that they're excluding you. They're just not including you. It's not that they don't like you or they don't want to see you. There's maybe facts and circumstances as to why they're getting together. And also, and this is brought out in the book, what have you done to initiate? So sometimes we are upset that we're not invited to an activity when we haven't seen or reached out to these people in months or maybe years. So like, do you expect to be included? Think about your actions.
Mel talks a lot about proximity in the book.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said for proximity. Like she tells the story of how her good friends became really good friends with her other good friends because they lived right near each other.
Right.
And just by proximity, there were like last minute things happening where they would get together and Mel was not called because she lived across town or whatever it is. And I see that happening. Like I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of people that live 2 minutes away from me. I can call them in 5 minutes and say, hey, you want to go for a walk? And they can be outside in 10 minutes and we meet and we go for a walk. Whereas I have other friends that it takes more coordination. It's not that I don't love them as much.
Right.
I still love the friends equally. It's just sometimes it's easier to just last minute. I'm not planning ahead. And so I think there's a lot of things that happen like that just based on, maybe you're at the same school and you're dropping off your kids at the same time, or they're on a team together, or whatever it is, for whatever reason, there's proximity. And so you're making plans with people based on what's going on in your life in any given time.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of stress we carry. We talk a lot about stress and the impact that has, whether it's our sleep and our heart rate variability. I do believe, especially I feel like for women and especially for moms, and I mean, moms, kids of all ages, we hold a lot of emotional stress with our kids. And so if they're going through anything or they're not, navigating life how we think they should be, whether it's academics or it's social, we carry that. And there is something freeing if you can just release some of those expectations and that control. We actually recently, my husband and I and my daughter came up with something where my husband and I are not allowed to try to control her in this one area of her life or make any suggestions or anything. And it's just let them. And we came to this and it's like, well, if she doesn't do A, then B may not happen. And she fully recognizes that. And that's okay. And I honestly, my husband looked at me and he's like, okay, this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard for both of us, but it's going to be hard for me especially. And in the whole scheme of life and things, it's really not that big of a deal. But in the moment, I do think sometimes it's harder for the parent. And I honestly think it's hard because we have these expectations, or maybe it's a social thing. And if they're not included in the group, then we won't be included in the parent group. And then that's our social life, right? And sometimes things are all intertwined. But at the end of the day, like, this is your kid's life and they have to do what they want. And if they don't, if it doesn't work out, they will learn from it. And they're young. They have the rest of their life to like screw up and make mistakes. And we just have to be there as guides to support them and to know that we are there for them and we will support them. But at the end of the day, it's not about us.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of parents, and myself included, sometimes make it too much about what we want or what we had the expectation for their kid. And I think if we just let our kids not listen to us, not have their parents try to control too much of what's going on in their life, they will be able to tune into what they really want and figure it out. And it may take them a while, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I just, you mentioned holding stress in our bodies. And I find that when I'm getting upset about something or having a difficult conversation or letting something with my kid get to me, I can feel my whole body tense up. My shoulders are tense. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, take a deep breath, Marnie. And I think when you're in these kinds of situations, if you can just take a step back, maybe put a hand on your heart, close your eyes, relax your shoulders, and just try and take some deep breaths, that can really help. I was actually in a situation last night with some plans surrounding my daughter, a trip, and parents trying to plan some things. And I was getting really frustrated. And then at the end of the day, I was talking it through with Jordan. And I was like, you know what? Do I even care? Yeah. Like, why am I getting worked up about this? This is not a big deal.
Right.
This does not matter in the big scheme of everything going on. Like, this is minutia. And so, but I had to talk myself. I had to reason with myself and be like, okay, let them. It's fine. It is what it is. Like, but it can be hard. And it takes a lot of mental work, for me at least, to put some of these ideas into practice.
Absolutely. And I think this kind of feeds into like the second part of the let them is then let me. So let them and then let me, meaning yourself, like do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So in your Marnie's instance, we're just taking those deep breaths, like, okay, let them. But then I notice when I'm storing stress and tension, I cannot take like a full deep breath. And it happens a lot before I eat. And I'm like, well, this is not good. If I'm like, that's clearly a sign I'm not in a calm state.
Right.
I'm not in the parasympathetic nervous system state where my body can digest food. And there's been times recently where I've literally been like, oh, okay, mom has to like literally stop this conversation and take some deep breaths. And that is really important. And that's just like a very small thing that you can do to calm yourself down, is taking those breaths. And if you find that you can't, like that's like, honestly, reach out to us. We can work with you through that, because I don't think enough people spend enough time in that rest and digest phase. I mean, and
Absolutely.
I do think this emotional type of stress and control, and whether this could be applies to work. I mean, we could go on and on with examples. I do think that impacts our entire quality of life. And it prevents you from doing what you actually really want. Like Marnie said, like in this instance, did you really care? No. So why not spend your time and energy doing something maybe
that
it's your
I
evening
really
routine.
Care about?
Like, it's,
Well, and that's the thing. Like, we live in such a controlling environment. Like, I truly feel like people out there are just trying to control everything around them, because people feel so out of control in general.
Yeah.
And so they're grasping onto whatever they can to feel in control. And so, all we can do is work on ourselves. At the end of the day, that's really all we can do. And we can, like you said, guide our children, guide our clients, but we can only take ownership of the way we behave, we react, we, let them, let me, all of that.
And it's so funny because, there's lots of books and resources that we like to share with people. And this is why we're sharing this with you, because it's powerful. I think I've recommended this book to like 10 people at least, including clients of all ages, like some 20-something-year-olds. And they have literally said, this is life-changing. I've already shared it with people. So this is just a book if, again, don't try to control anyone in your life, but for a recommendation for one book that I truly believe every person out there could benefit from, I think this is it. And it's funny because my daughter, I think I was mentioning something to her about this. I don't know. This was like in January, maybe. And she's like, oh, Mom, I think that's popped up on my TikTok feed. So Mel, you're doing a great job of reaching out to even like the teenagers. And I think it's really powerful for them, especially with friends and social pressures and social anxiety. This is huge.
Absolutely.
Let them go to the prom without you, or let them go, to a party without you and not be included,
And it's funny that you said that, because my son, who's 24, around the time I was reading the book, he was like, oh, Mom, have you heard of Mel Robbins? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I've been listening to her podcast and it's really good. I'm like, well, you should read her book.
Yeah.
Her book is really good too. But like, I would have never expected my 24-year-old son to like relate to her. And he totally does. So I think that's pretty cool. And if anybody out there has a connection to Mel Robbins, we would love to have her on our show and talk about this more. And we'd love to hear from you guys and, hear about your let them moments. And if you've read the book, how are you incorporating some of this into your own life?
Yes. And I do think, Marnie, like you said, you almost need to read it again. I started listening to it a second time. I haven't finished it, but it's one of those books. It's probably like every year you should read it, because you'll get something new out of it. Or maybe it's like a habit, like a new habit. Like, oh, I started doing this and then I just kind of stopped again. And so it's like a good refresher, I feel like.
And it sounds basic. It really does. Yeah. Like those two words, sounds so simple and basic, but yet it is a challenge.
It's a challenge. It's powerful. But I guess that goes back to, okay, it's simple, not easy, which we say a lot. It's simple. Like life doesn't need to be complicated. Same thing with like working out or eating better. Like it doesn't need to be complicated. So letthem is simple and it's freeing. And it's also about like surrender.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of books that I've read that sort of feed into this letthem theory. Like I'm finishing up The Anxious Generation. And I feel like at the end of that book where he talks about, especially like parents of kids and being able to like let them play, let them walk to the park or the store by themselves, let them cook dinner, like what's the worst that's going to happen? Oh, they may burn it or it doesn't turn out. Okay, who cares?
Right? Or the
kitchen
kitchen's a disaster.
Yeah. Hopefully no kitchen fires, but hopefully it's just like a dirty pan or something.
Yeah.
But we need to just let them. And so it has a ripple effect in every area of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let us know what you thought of the episode. Reach out to us, DM us on social media.
And have a great day.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.